At UMC, access to your health care is only a call away. Dial 74-NURSE for free, instant medical advice from experienced and trusted UMC nurses, 24 hours a day. Learn more at umchealthsystem.com.
And welcome in everyone to RedRaiders.com. I'm Zach Long, that is Don Williams and Krista Pirtle, and you're on the UMC Health System AJ Media pregame show as we get you ready for Texas Tech and Kansas State, an early one at 11 a.m. on Saturday morning. And guys, Kansas State, of course, started the year a little rough, but maybe right now the Red Raiders could be catching the Wildcats at the wrong time, Don. They're getting a little bit better.
They are. I think they're the stealth Wildcats. You look at the record, and it says they're 4-4 and 2-3 in the Big 12, and you think, okay, no big deal. But then you go inside the numbers, as they say, and Kansas State's probably should have beaten Oklahoma State in Stillwater, lost to them by 4. Gave Baylor the best game that anyone's given Baylor this year, and played another close game against the Longhorns down in Austin. So they're the stealth Wildcats.
And Chris, that's kind of hard to pull one over on a guy like Bill Snyder. He's been there, done it, and got several T-shirts.
Absolutely, and if he wins on Saturday, that will be his 175th career win, all of those coming at Kansas State.
Should be an interesting game, and right now I want to get into what is ailing the Red Raiders. Of course, they've lost 2 in a row. Now, granted, those are both top 15 teams, but there's been some issues we've been pointing out over the last couple weeks on the shows and in your guys' articles. The Red Raiders have some concerns. I want to go through what maybe is your biggest concern right now. Krista, I'll start with you.
I'm going to go with the rush defense. When Tech was 7-0, they allowed only 123.4 yards on the ground. These past 2 weeks, going 0-2, they've allowed 279. Kansas State runs the ball. Baylor runs the ball. Texas runs the ball. So if they want to win out, they've got to stop the run.
Yeah, that's a good point right there. It just doesn't get any easier schedule-wise, Don. What concerns you for Texas Tech?
Kind of piggybacking off of what Krista said, and that's as beaten up as the defense is right now. Part of the issue is all the people that they are missing is making it not the same defense that you saw in the first half of the season with Dartwan Bush out on the defensive line. That's kind of changed up the rotation in the defensive front. J.J. Gaines being out for the season at strong safety, and then a couple of guys that have been in and out of the lineup here for the last couple of weeks. Terrence Bullitt hurt some ribs against West Virginia, if I remember correctly, misses nearly all the Oklahoma game, and then comes back and gets the start against Oklahoma State and breaks his hand, and he misses the entire game. So they have to move some people around at linebacker, moving Micah Alway to the outside. And then Trey Porter's a guy who's been beaten up, fighting through some injuries for a few weeks now, up at West Virginia. He rolled an ankle, and then last week against Oklahoma State, he aggravates that ankle injury, and so now Tech's going into this game against Kansas State with not knowing the availability of Dartwan Bush and Terrence Bullitt in the front 7. And I think even a more scary situation maybe in the secondary with, they finished that game last Saturday night with nothing but freshmen playing safety. With Porter down and with Gaines down, you're down to Keenan Ward, Tanner Jacobson, and a true freshman, Justice Nelson, whose red shirt they just removed last week to get him in there. So that's a very precarious situation, to say the least.
You paint a pretty vivid picture there, Tom, with that rash of injuries. Now I want to move on to something else here. I think it's easy for Texas Tech fans, it's in their nature, to maybe get a little down after the start that this football team got off to. You can understand why they're disappointed with 2 losses, but I want to pose this question to you. In terms of the regular season, if Texas Tech finishes with 7 wins, which means they would not win again in the regular season, or maybe 8 wins, which means they get a win in this last 3, would this season still be considered a success? Krista?
Yeah, they're going to a bowl game. I mean, this is Coach Kingsbury's first ride as a head coach. He comes in with 2 true freshman quarterbacks, making it 6 wins in a bowl game. It's not too bad.
Don, what's your perspective on that?
I'd say yeah, because I go back to where I thought this team would be at the beginning of the year, and I said they would be a 6-6 or 7-5 football team. They knocked out all 7 of those wins in the first 7 weeks. So I think anything beyond that is gravy. The only thing that would change it would be if the wheels just fell off and they stopped being competitive. I mean, they were very competitive at Oklahoma. They were disappointed against Oklahoma State, played a sloppy game. but it was not a blowout with the final score of 52-34, and they were within 42-31 there, with the opportunity to come back again middle of the second half. So I would say the combination of getting to 7 wins and the rebuilt interest that Cliff Kingsbury has generated, getting folks back in the stands and making Jones Stadium an exciting place again, makes it a successful season for the most part, probably regardless of what happens the rest of the way.
At the least level, guys, if they can pick up one of these last 3 and then get a bowl win, that's a 9-win season. That is a monumental accomplishment. I know they wanted more, but that is a heck of a lot of momentum, Krista, to go into next season with.
Absolutely, and then with all the freshmen that you have on both sides of the ball and special teams, they're getting really good experience this year to go into next year with that under their belt and to know what to expect from the Big 12. So I think it'll pay off.
And also from a recruiting standpoint, that definitely helps Dom when you get that national exposure with a little bit better bowl up in that 8-9 win range.
Yeah, being a first-year coach, of course, Cliff Kingsbury and his staff don't really have you don't look for a whole lot of recruiting results in year 1 because you're kind of getting your feet on the ground, you're reestablishing your contacts. Now, they do already have 21, 22 commitments, something like that. So the recruiting class is nearly built, but I think the key is that you've kind of built some excitement with the guys going forward, recruits who are sophomores and juniors now.
So basically, no reason to get real down here. Texas Tech still has a chance to do a lot of damage in the regular season and, of course, in a bowl game. Right now, though, we're going to step aside and take a break, and we're going to be right back to look at a very competitive Big 12 schedule this week, and we'll get down to the nuts and bolts of predicting Kansas State and Texas Tech. You're on the UMC Health System AJ Media pregame show. Coverage of Texas Tech football on your iPad. Download the Game Day app from AJ Media. Full coverage of each game with in-depth stories and videos. Find rosters, depth charts, and stats to get you ready each week. Also, recruiting coverage from Reckham 24/7. The Game Day app from AJ Media. And welcome back, everyone, to the UMC Health System AJ Media pregame show as we get you ready for Texas Tech and Kansas State. But first, we're going to look at the Big 12 Conference, and we're definitely going to have some big boys this week. We've said it from the beginning of the season. November was going to be the separation month for the Big 12 Conference, and it is not letting us down. That's exactly what's happening. Let's get into this slate of game. We'll start first with some of the less interesting games. TCU and Iowa State. This is kind of a statement game for these two teams and maybe the last chance, Krista, for Iowa State to get a win this year.
Absolutely. I'm going to give it to Iowa State. I think for it to be in Ames gives them kind of the upper hand going into it. So we'll let the Cyclones get a conference win.
TCU's defense to me is still really good, Don. I think they do a really good job, and they're going to get enough done. Paul Hall gets back for a second game. Maybe he gets some motion going. I still think they have enough to beat Iowa State names.
Yeah, I think TCU is probably the biggest most disappointing team in the Big 12 this year. And I went back and forth on this one. I'm tempted to take Iowa State in this one as well. I guess the difference to me, though, is TCU is still playing something. The Horned Frogs have to go win this game if they want to get bowl eligible. I mean, this doesn't get them to bowl eligibility, but they can't afford to lose anymore. So this is one they got to have, and so I'll take TCU.
Yeah, if you lose the game, then you're really at a point where it's just been let's be honest, a horrible season for TCU. After being one of the teams mentioned in the preseason conference, right? That's not where Gary Patterson and the Horned Frogs wanted to finish. Next up, what could be a very interesting game in Morgantown, West Virginia, Krista. Texas takes on the Mountaineers.
It's time. Texas, you're done. West Virginia.
You know what? I'm going to go right with you here. I think this is a viper pit Texas is walking into. I like West Virginia's progression. This is just the right time and the right place for a letdown. Oklahoma State got the same thing in there. Texas Tech barely got out with a win. This is where Texas comes back down to earth. I'm taking the Mountaineers in an upset, Don.
I disagree with you guys. I like how Texas kind of has it going now, and kind of has their trains back on the track, so to speak, after the bad beginning. They are favored by a touchdown in this one. It is the Longhorns' first visit to Morgantown. They're one of the last teams that still has to go to the new location. But I think it'll be a successful first trip for them, particularly with the running game. And Malcolm Brown with a real big game last week. I think they'll keep it going and beat the Mountaineers.
We almost had a clean sweep there on Texas, but Don, he's got too much wisdom, man. It's hard to get him to bite on these big-time upsets. Up next, a game that probably will be extremely ugly, guys. Oklahoma State and Kansas, Krista.
Oklahoma State, they'll get that done. They'll add on to hopefully winning a Big 12 title at the end of the season.
Yeah, they're back in control of what they can do in this conference. Cannot afford a letdown against Kansas. I think they'll take care of business. Don?
Yeah, Oklahoma State for me as well. I think that obviously the big thing that happened for the Cowboys last week was the play of Clint Chelf getting, throwing 2 touchdown passes, running for a couple of touchdowns. Mike Gundy said at the beginning of last week that they have to start throwing the ball better, period. Got to have better quarterback play. And it worked. They did. And that's a key development for them. And you don't necessarily need great quarterback play to win at Kansas, but the Cowboys should take this one pretty easily.
Let's move on now to the big boy, of course, the Thursday night game in Waco, Texas. The tarp is off, kids. Oklahoma and Baylor. Tons of implications in this one, Krista.
I don't think that Baylor has ever had to play a game this big ever. So, but I think that they're up to it. I think Baylor's going to win this one.
You know, for me, Oklahoma by far the best defense Baylor is going to see this year. The concern, can Oklahoma outscore Baylor? Don, I don't think they can. The Bears just too much offensive firepower in this one. Oklahoma can't hang with them. I look somewhere in the vicinity of a 10 to a 14-point win for the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, it is Baylor's first really game that they have to prove themselves this year, I think. If you throw out maybe TCU, this is the second team that has a winning record that Baylor has played this year. Key thing for me though is they just have it going so well with what they do offensively with the running backs and the success that those receivers, Antoine Goodley and Tevin Reese, that both have being top 10 in the nation in receiving. Even as good as Oklahoma's played on defense this year, I think it's going to be a big challenge for the Sooners to keep those guys under control in Waco. So I think Baylor will keep it going, stay undefeated.
And that, of course, will have huge implications on Texas Tech's game next week when they face Baylor in Arlington. All right, guys, now let's move on to the one at hand. Of course, Texas Tech and Kansas State. They kick it off at 11 a.m. from Jones AT&T Stadium. So it'll be an early environment. Will be a heck of an environment, though, with all the causes, with the lone survivor. The Purple Heart recipient. Should be a very emotional atmosphere. The key question, though, can Texas Tech stop Kansas State? This looks like a bad time on paper to face the Wildcats. Krista, how do you see this one coming out?
I'm going to have to go with Kansas State in this one, 25-21. Is there a fairy godmother that can heal the defense, make them stop the run, and make sure that Davis Webb completes 100% of his passes? Is there one of those?
I don't think there's any fairy godmothers.
But if there is, the uniforms look really cool. But still, I'm going to have to go with Kansas State.
For me, it comes down to two things right now. It's the identity of this football team. Is it on step one, a team that got beat by two pretty darn good football teams in the top 15 and they're still a very competitive football team? Or is it the Texas Tech team that is starting to take on a defensive identity of not being able to stop the run? And right now that is a very hard thing for me to debate in my head. Ultimately, like I've said and alluded to, I think they're catching Kansas State at the wrong time. This is one of the most dangerous 4-win teams in the country. They're still playing for a ton. They win this game. There's a great chance Kansas State gets bowl eligible. The injuries on defense are highly concerning. I just think at the end of the day, Kansas State's run game, their bounce, their veteran special teams play just too much. I'm going to go with Kansas State in this one, Don, 31-24.
And you guys both make good points. And I understand where you're coming from. I think it's very possible that the Red Raiders could drop another one at home on Saturday. But remember, it is senior day. You have 18 guys who are going out playing their last game. Kerry Hyder, Eric Ward, those players chief among them. So I think Red Raiders will get up. And, this is also an 11 a.m. game. And a lot of times we talk about can the team get started early. But this is actually the fourth 11 a.m. game that Texas Tech has played this season, and they've won all three of them. They've won each of the first three. I do think it's going to be a close game. And I'll go Texas Tech 26, Kansas State 24. That's what, two touchdowns and 4 Ryan Buston field goals.
Which he's good at kicking. You always gotta, when you pick these games, you always have to equate in Ryan Buston field goals because he's been that dominant this year for the Red Raiders, which also means on the other side they didn't finish inside the red zone, which could ultimately cost him against Kansas State. Should be a heck of a game, and let's be honest, it is gut check time for the Red Raiders. This is a must-win for Texas Tech if they want to keep momentum and have a chance against Baylor and Texas. A loss in this one could do a lot of damage mentally, and it might take a little luster out of the fan base. Texas Tech needs to get a win here, but it's going to be a tough road to hoe against a veteran coach like Bill Snyder and the Kansas State Wildcats, who seem to be getting better every single week. That's going to wrap up this episode, though, of the UMC Health System AJ Media pregame show. Stay locked in with us. Of course, all of our other products over at LubbockOnline.com and RedRaiders.com. Of course, you got Don versus Twitter. He took on some tough questions this week. We also have our other products up recapping the Monday press conference, and of course, we'll have full coverage on Saturday. After the game, be sure and check out these guys' articles, our videos and photos at LubbockOnline.com and RedRaiders.com. For now, though, we bid you farewell. I'm Zach Long. That is Don Williams. That is Krista Pirtle, and you're on RedRaiders.com.